Sometimes a lesson is learned the first time. Like when you place your hand on a hot stove, you get burned and you don't do it again. Other lessons can take years to learn. For me, the most important ones took a very long time, and they came from the women who loved me the most. My grandmother, my mother, and eventually myself. Today, I can sum them up like this. The first lesson from my grandmother is a warning. Christine, you do too much. The second lesson from my mom is a reminder. Everything is a matter of timing. And the third lesson came during a turning point in my life that changed everything. Every no is actually a yes to something else. What I didn't realize at the time was each of these lessons was pointing me towards the same truth. You were created on purpose for a purpose. Let me start with my grandmother's lesson. This is a woman who did not graduate high school, and yet she is one of the most influential teachers in my life. When her father died, her mother and her grandmother needed help just to keep the roof over their heads and food on the table. So she made a choice. She dropped out of school and went to work on a farm picking beans in the hot sun just to help provide for her family. My grandmother didn't resent this time in her life. She often spoke about it with love and purpose, even though she had to give up her education. Now, she also was somebody who gave advice. And sometimes she gave it whether we wanted it or not. And so often she would say to me, Christine, you do too much. I would shrug her off. My reply, no I don't, Grandma. I just do what needs to be done. But back then I had crammed so much into my day that I would often be late to pick her up. And she would be standing there patiently waiting by the door. And I would think, it's fine, she'll understand. But what I didn't understand at the time was, I wasn't just doing too much. I was slowly burning out. And maybe some of you know that feeling too. You're rushing from one thing to the next, knowing the pace you're keeping isn't sustainable. And sadly, I didn't realize she was right until after she passed away. But what I understand now is she wasn't just telling me to do less, she was trying to help me make space, not just in my schedule, but in my life. Because doing too much doesn't just exhaust you, it also disconnects you from the life that you are meant to live. Let's go to the second lesson, the one that I learned from my mother. Everything is a matter of timing. When my mom was 21, she lost her mom to cancer, just as she was stepping into adulthood. And I believe that loss shaped my mom's life, because she understood something that I never did. Life doesn't unfold on our timeline, it unfolds in God's timing. And because of that, my mom has always carried a unique strength with her. Now, my mom went to college and earned an associate's degree. She worked as a doctor's secretary before becoming a stay-at-home mom and eventually returning to the workforce. When my sister and I were little, she was present for everything. The scraped knees, the small moments, and the everyday things that mattered. And my mom is a woman of faith. She has always encouraged us to pray and turn to God, especially in our darkest hours. She also has a lot of sayings. Everything is a matter of timing is one that she repeats often. When I was younger, I used to think she was trying to teach me patience, something I certainly resisted. But now I realize it means something deeper. Sometimes an opportunity appears, but we're moving too fast to recognize it. Have you ever had something happen in your life and you nearly miss it? Not because it wasn't right for you, but because life was moving too fast. For me, I didn't plan on becoming an entrepreneur. In fact, if you had asked me a couple years before, I would have told you, what are you talking about? That's not even on my radar. But when the opportunity happened, I was ready to hear it. And it came through a simple conversation, one of those moments that could have easily passed by if I had still been moving at the pace that I used to. Makes me wonder, how often do we miss opportunities because life is moving too fast? And maybe that's where some of you are right now. There's something trying to get your attention, like an idea or a change or a next step. But life is moving too fast to recognize it. Between my grandmother's resilience and my mom's faith, I grew up seeing what was possible. But what I didn't understand yet was how to figure out what was meant for me. So when it came time to decide what to do after high school, there wasn't even a question of if I would go to college. The question was, what would I study as the first person in my family to earn a bachelor's degree? And I had absolutely no idea. But I knew this. Because of the sacrifices my grandma made, education mattered. So when my mom and guidance counselor suggested I get a degree in business administration, I said, okay, I'll give it a try. And then I earned a degree in something that I really wasn't passionate about. After college, I did what I thought I was supposed to do. I worked hard, but something always felt off. Looking back now, I wasn't doing anything wrong. I just hadn't slowed down long enough to ask, what had I been created for? And instead of slowing down, I sped up. I became a mom. And while raising our daughter felt like my purpose, something felt off. Because instead of slowing down, I just kept going faster. And I wonder, how many of you are like that too? You're meeting every obligation and expectation, but yet wondering, is there something more for me? And that's where I was. And so when I finally slowed down, what I realized was we are all created on purpose for a purpose. Here's the thing. Purpose rarely arrives as one big revelation. It often unfolds step by step. Many people think we have to wait for certainty before we start. But that's not always the case. Clarity doesn't always come first. Sometimes it's more than uncertainty that keeps us, it's fear. And it's not just our fear, it's the, do I know what I'm doing? Do I belong here? And sometimes that fear sounds like our own voice, the one that says, who do you think you are? But the truth is, clarity doesn't come before action, clarity comes because of it. One step leads to another, and then suddenly, you're somewhere you never expected to be, like standing here on this stage. And even standing here, I am still learning life lessons. And one of those lessons that stings the most came from someone much younger than me, my daughter. When she told me she wanted to become a teacher, she was hopeful and excited. And what did I do? I discouraged her. Not because I don't think teachers are extraordinary, but because I worried the bureaucratic system would steal her passion, her creativity, and her joy. I thought I was protecting her. I thought I knew better. But she didn't listen, and thank God she didn't, because in that moment I realized something. I had become the voice of doubt in my own daughter's life. And maybe some of you have heard that voice too, from someone else, or even from yourself. And that's when the truth hit me again. Not just for her or for me, but for you too. You were created on purpose for a purpose. Sometimes the people around us cannot see what we were born to do. They cannot see that spark inside of us, but it doesn't mean it isn't there. And every time someone pauses and takes a step towards that inner voice, it creates a ripple. One small step leads to another, and then suddenly the life you imagined is unfolding before you. I want to go back to my mom's lesson for a minute. Everything is a matter of timing. This moment, this small pause, this can be your timing. But it won't last unless you protect it. Because life doesn't slow down on its own. It speeds right back up. And when it does, we are constantly doing. And when we are constantly doing, we miss the very reason we were created. It took me years. But I finally learned the lessons I was given. The first one, slow down so you could hear the life you were created for. The second lesson, trust the timing, especially when you don't understand it. And the third lesson, have the courage to say no so you can say yes to something that matters more. I want you to know that the life you are meant to live, it doesn't begin with a giant leap. It begins with something much smaller. A pause, a choice, and a step. So before I walk off this stage, I want to ask you something. What is that one thing you felt called to do and you haven't acted on yet? That thing, that pull you feel, you are not imagining it. So I invite you to take one step towards it. But before we do that, you might be feeling some resistance. You might be thinking, I can't change anything. I have to do the things that I do in my life. But I want you to know something. I understand, because every time my grandma told me I was doing too much, I resisted her too. I felt stuck. I felt like I had to do all of those things. But what I know now is how we choose to spend our time, our energy, and our money is a direct reflection of what we value. And when those actions are out of alignment with our values, like they were for me, I didn't know how to change. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to get off the path. So I kept pushing until I couldn't push anymore. And that's when I realized something. I had a choice. Going forward, I could choose. How am I going to spend my time, my energy, and my money? Who and what are the things that I'm going to say yes to, and what are the things I'm going to say no to? And that changed everything for me. So I'm going to invite you again. What is one small step you can take that you're not going to talk yourself out of? Because progress doesn't come from perfection, it comes from taking action. And it's so important that when we take the action, we celebrate it. Not quietly, but boldly. I'm going to say that again. Progress doesn't come from perfection. It comes from taking action. And take this from somebody who gets analysis paralysis and overthinks everything. So within the next 24 hours, take action on something. One small step. Don't wait. Don't overthink it. Pick up the phone. Make that phone call. Write the email. Write the first paragraph in that book you want to write. Ask yourself, what will you say no to so you can say yes to something that matters? Because the truth is simple. You are created on purpose for a purpose. And what you choose to do next, it matters more than you think it does. Because the world is waiting for the ripple that only you can create. Thank you.